Welcome to Association Chat, an online discussion where we warm ourselves by the virtual fire with topics of the day, welcoming thought leaders and trailblazers alike to join up in this online home for the association community. I'm the host of Association Chat, KiKi L'Italien, and what a moment for witnessing social change in the world today. I am talking to you today, and we are more than 2 years deep into a global pandemic. We are witnessing war unfold as Russia invades Ukraine. We are navigating the consequences of climate change. And in the midst of it all, we have the aid of our technological tools. We have these tools that seem like magic that have come to our aid. We have automation, we have AI, we have machine learning that helps us with our member relations. We have workplace cultures, remote work teams. What does smart tech mean for nonprofits today? Why should nonprofits remain human-centered? That's what we're talking about today. That's not a small thing. And I'm talking with two thought leaders who are known for their work at this intersection of social change and technology, emerging technology. And that's Beth Kanter and Allison Fine, who also have a new book that is out that they've written, The Smart Nonprofit, Staying Human-Centered in an Age of Automation. Wow. Hello, Allison and Beth. There's a lot going on. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having us. We're excited to be here.
Oh, I'm excited too, because this is a big thing. I have your book on Kindle, but the official release date is tomorrow, right? I've pre-ordered and everything. Yeah. So I'm super, super excited about getting my hardback copy in the mail, but I feel like I am.
Me too.
I know. Let me show. I'll tell you so that you can see that I've got this right here. I'm in the midst of reading it right now.
Yeah.
There is so much that's going on in the world today. I mentioned a few of the big items that we're all very familiar with, but this has just been a time when leaders have been asked to sort of come to the forefront and respond and figure out new solutions for some of these problems that they've never had to face before. And in a lot of cases, those solutions had to do with technology. But a lot of times in our association, nonprofit boards and leadership, we don't see leaders thinking that they're necessarily the people to be paying attention to tech. So what I wanted to do is just start with you, Allison, and ask you about this, because, what leaders need to know about emerging tech and how involved they should be is something that I think there hasn't been enough conversation around. And I would like to explore that with you a little bit.
Well, thank you, KiKi, and thank you for having us. It's such an exciting day for us. We're on launch eve, and how lucky am I that I get to work with Beth Kanter every single day. So it is
even luckier because I get to work with Allison.
Aw, that's so nice.
We've had the great pleasure of working together for over 15 years. So this is great.
I was actually saying, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was actually saying, I'm a big fan. I have a collection, but this is probably my favorite book that I go to all the time. Is the Network Nonprofit.
Well, we enjoyed writing that one, and that was for a moment in time when social media was just beginning to take off. And this is another time like that, when smart tech, which is AI and other advanced digital tech that makes decisions and does actions by and for people, right? Things that only people could do until a couple of years ago. It is by far, KiKi, the most powerful technology that everyday people and organizations have ever had at their disposal. So it is not like picking up a new word processing software, right? This is technology that's going to determine who gets hired, who gets services, who gets information, who gets power. And that's why using smart tech in our estimation is not a technical challenge. That's easy. Just grab it off the shelf. It's a leadership challenge. how are we going to use this really powerful technology, strategically, ethically, responsibly, carefully, so that our organizations can pivot from the daily whack-a-mole hamster wheel of transactional organizational life, which is where and how people live now, to a deeply relational model where nonprofit people and organizations can do the work that they came to do, that really meaningful, personal, relational, social change work.
Well, and I do think that, I mean, all of those things, they sound really good. And I can imagine association leaders saying, yeah, right, absolutely. But the actual execution of it, the actual like making it happen, how do we connect the dots so that we can make that easier for a lot of organizations where maybe that hasn't been the natural tendency to bring leadership in to have more of a say? Because what you're talking about is some really important strategic decisions that have to be made for the organization as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. In our book, not only do we talk about all the great benefits as well as the challenges, and we'll get to that later, we do provide kind of a roadmap or a framework for leaders and their organizations to think about the strategic and thoughtful and reflective adoption of smart tech. And it's called Ready, Set, Go. And the first step isn't to just do the technology. And I know we're all under pressure to like do stuff, right? But we really need to take a step back, push that pause button and step back and think about our end users and think about the problems that we're trying to solve. Smart tech is great at eliminating grunt work for staff, which can then free up time and lead to better work-life balance. So what's causing all that pain and suffering and extra time? I do a lot of consulting and well-being in the workplace, and one area is unrealistic workloads. And when we start to dig into that a little bit, KiKi, it's really about all these not automated systems where people are cutting and pasting, or they're just trying to gather up like all the information because it's across 10 different spreadsheets, or it's over in that department. There's no kind of thought around automation, and it's exhausting. And of course, you don't have to start with a big enterprise problem. You can look at a smaller problem that's, what's the time suck? What are these tasks, and what's the workflow, and how can we consider automating this? But you can't just make that decision sitting around the table. You need to, if it's going to affect donors, you need to be talking to the donors about it. If it's going to affect staff, talk to the staff, talk to clients. So it's figure out the pain points from the end user's point of view. And there's a whole set of methodologies that you can use. Design thinking is one of them. And that's the very, very first step. The second thing is that we need to do, which is set our due diligence around the tool selection. And Allison will talk about this in more detail when we talk about the challenges. And then the go piece is the sort of inching our way and the experimental and the iteration that we need to do to get it to scale, to make sure that we're carefully adopting.
Well, and you really teed that up well for me, because let's talk about the challenges. We have this technology that seems to be doing so many good things for us. I mean, can you imagine before the pandemic trying to get so many people to try to come together for meetings and online? And now, now my 83-year-old mother has been on Zoom. So it's kind of amazing that we've had the entire world in this test tube, this technological test tube, to get us to a point where we can do so much. However, I mean, while all of these things are amazing, they're not without their challenges. So what are some of those complications?
Well, I think we should start, KiKi, with a quote from Kathy O'Neill. She's a data scientist who wrote a great book called Math Destruction. And she said, algorithms are opinions embedded in code, right? So we have this general public sense that computers can do no wrong, right? It's automated, it's a robot, it's a computer, right? They are without emotion or opinion. The fact is that somebody had to program that bot at some point, and they put into the code their own personal biases, particularly when we're talking about social services. So the fact is, most coders are white men, and a lot of the code that's affecting, say, housing or food services have bias embedded in it against Black and brown people, right? That's just a fact. So we need to understand the both the problem with the code and the problem with the data used to train the systems, right? So what we call smart tech is looking for patterns in data, because it's not actually all that smart to respond to, right? So it's saying when somebody asks this question, this is what the response, or if a picture looks like this is what that means. In order to train bots in social services, the only place to get data sets that are Library of Congress size are from historic systems. Those systems were biased, right?
Right.
So now we have two strikes of bias walking into these systems. Then we have the fact that too often nonprofits and the vendors who are making these systems haven't thought enough about privacy and raised the bar in terms of keeping people's data private, and really securing, the data. And finally, you have the risk of actually doing harm to people and organizations if you haven't thought through what happens when you put technology in and take people out of systems, right? Who can get hurt by that? So in our estimation, KiKi, smart tech has enormous benefits, but organizations need to move very carefully and much better slow than fast in thinking through how to use smart tech.
Well, and that is so there's so much good there. And you are definitely, these are words that are so important for nonprofit leaders to hear right now. As you know, there are so many small staffed organizations, nonprofits that are trying already to do a lot with a little. And as much as we love our vendors who come to us with lots of solutions, I think sometimes there's the tendency to look at a potential solution and say, that has all the answers. I can just buy it and it's going to solve all my problems, And, but we know that that's not always the case. What do you advise for some of that approach to maybe the relationship that association leaders have with vendors, and making sure that relationship is as positive as it can be? Beth, I'll give that one to you.
Sure. And it's part of our set, of our Ready, Set, Go. And there's a piece of that that's doing your due diligence with vendors and asking those questions. Often, the question like, how was your algorithm trained? What was the data set? And a lot of times we hear that's proprietary. It's
right.
It's this black magic voodoo, and we can't let you know what the secret recipe is. We really need to push back, because that's where the potential for bias can be found. And we really want to ask those questions of vendors. We don't want to just go with the first product that somebody talks to us about, or they share some case study that they got an 8,000% increase in response rates. We want to read the white paper critically. We want to ask those critical questions. And I'll give you an example. And this one's maybe for small organizations. There's a lot of software out there that's automation, smart tech, that can analyze your website and feed you back recommendations on its level of accessibility, to making sure that it's accessible to people who are blind, or are, there's all kinds of standards that you have to follow to make sure that people who are disabled can access your site. And there's software that can automate this task, okay? And I had one person came to me, oh, I'm using this. What do you think of this tool? And I said, well, you should also compare it to others. Here's a site that lists other types of software, and you should Google the name of the software and the term like ableist and see
Yeah.
what pops up. And of course, there were lawsuits,
Yeah.
So we can't just, I love vendors. I love all the tech tools, and I know a lot of them, and they're amazing people, amazing tools. But I always want to put my critical thinking cap on, and I want to really push back and understand. And understand that it's not going to just do all my laundry, pick up my kids from school, and walk my dog. That they're it's not. Oh, tech isn't perfect.
Yeah. Well, that's for sure. I think if there's one thing that we figured out over time, tech really isn't perfect, and even when it seems to be, it seems to have all of this magical capability. Like we have, I guess I'm trying to remember. It used to be called Jarvis, and now it's something else. It crafts the content for you, AI created content. There's so many ways where this can go wrong. And I think what I love about your book, and I haven't read the whole thing so far, is that human-centered approach. Part of your guidelines is to say, hey, we need a human at the wheel. We need a human at the helm to make sure that this is doing what we want it to do. So what goes into that? And I'm not Allison, Beth, which
well, I have a quick example that I can hand over to Allison. It's actually kind of funny. There's I don't know how many of your audience are marketers. I assume a lot, or fundraisers. So there's a whole bunch of low cost tools out there that can help automate your creative content, and especially for social. And there's one that does it will take videos or articles. So it'll take a video, it'll transcribe it, and then it'll spit out a bunch of tweets or LinkedIn posts. It can also automate the scheduling. Okay, so I could just I'm just going to click that button and have it send out all the tweets, because I looked at it and it spelled my name wrong.
Oh my gosh.
And it picked up all the and there were some nonsensical bits that it just grabbed from the transcription. The whole thing wasn't bad. There were some couple really powerful pieces that it pulled out, and I put those into a couple of tweets around the book, and they're some of the best tweets. So there was that need for that human input.
Right. I think.
So, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Allison, please.
So our framework for a smart nonprofit, KiKi, is an organization that's using smart tech by being human-centered, by being knowledgeable, and by being prepared, and by being knowledgeable and reflective. So it all begins in our mind with being human-centered, which is a design philosophy, right? We're going to design with a wide variety of stakeholders involved, but also ensuring that every step of the way of an automated process has some human supervision, right? We're not taking people out of the equation. We're putting them in very strategic places so that they can ensure that the tech is doing good things. One of our favorite organizations, right in the first chapter, is an organization called Talking Points that Hee-Jae Lim created in 2015 to create an app as an interface between teachers and parents, generally immigrant parents who have a different language. And we know from research, for years and years of research, that parental engagement with schools has a huge impact on school outcomes for kids. And yet this language barrier has been tremendously detrimental for kids whose parents speak a different language. Hee-Jae had a human-centered design process. They started very small, piloted it, had an iterative design effort, and still today have people who are looking at the translations to make sure that they're culturally appropriate, that the slang is correct, that the words really work well. The system is learning a lot, right? The goal is ultimately to just have humans looking at engagements the system identifies as problematic. But in just 6 years, KiKi, they have facilitated over 20 million conversations between teachers and parents, right? So they're smart, they're thoughtful, they're human-centric, and they're solving this really important problem.
Well, it's encouraging to hear these stories where with the mix of tech and that human-centric approach, that you can actually get closer to achieving an organization's mission, that you're seeing these success stories. I think what is maybe troubling for a lot of organizations is the leaders feel overwhelmed. They're not sure exactly what technology to focus on, and when it's the right amount of human oversight, or when they can just turn that over and expect that either a software solution, some kind of tech solution, is going to be the solution for them. When you look at the relationship between, say, the organization's executive director and CEO and the board chair in evaluating or discussing or reflecting on that technology that is at play within the organization, where do you start? I haven't had to, just a full disclosure, I haven't had a chance to read through the entire book, so I don't know the answer yet, but I'm hoping that you have it for me. What's the first approach, or the best approach?
Beth, you want me to start and then you can dive in?
Yeah, go ahead. Go for
so
it.
I think at that level, KiKi, what we'd like to see organizations do is begin to have conversations about who they want to be in the world before they dive into what they want to do in the world, right? So we have a habit in nonprofits. Look, here's the fact. The fact is there's always going to be far more demand for our services than we're going to be able to provide, right? We are always going to feel under-resourced and over-demanded. In response to that, too many organizations jump into doing and get on the hamster wheel and start to go really, really fast. One key indicator of that kind of what we call, transactional ways of working in the fundraising area is the fact that 75% of donors don't make it from year 1 to year 2, right? That's a norm in the sector. We call it the leaky bucket problem, right? Donors coming in and flying back out again. And what this does is it makes people frantic. At the CEO board chair level, what we'd love to see them do is really think through, what's our culture? How do we want to engage with the world? What problems are we trying to solve? And then what's the best way for us to solve them? And to realize that smart tech embedded in those strategic ways that Beth was talking about, right? Really focusing on the pain points, frees up the staff, what we call the dividend of time, to be really relational, to do the things human beings can only do. And the reason why people came to this work, right? To build strong relationships, to tell stories, to engage with donors and volunteers and clients, to solve problems, to be creative, and even, dare we say it, to dream.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd follow that up with being really specific and on the ground. And I was sitting, when you asked that question, I thought it was a great question. I was imagining, okay, so I'm an executive director and I'm having my weekly or my monthly or biweekly check-in with my CEO, with my board chair, and we're preparing for the next board meeting. And there's, a budget that has to be done. And maybe there's concern about not being to raise enough money for the budget, or, things, we need to cut back. And maybe this conversation about, hey, we should adopt some smart tech and you can lay off staff. We wrote the book so we could equip executive directors and hopefully board chairs with the thinking that that's not the way to think about this technology. It's not a way to reduce your staff headcount in any way. And in fact, that can be very detrimental because, again, this technology can't do human judgment, empathy, intuitive problem solving. It's really great at doing grunt work, okay? Analyzing large swaths of data, automating different tasks that can be exhausting. So if we can reshift that time if we can free up some time, imagine the possibilities. Allison's already given these great examples about like externally what that happens with stakeholders. But we've been through the last 2 years of this pandemic, and it's been hard on everybody. All the screen work, everything, all Zoom, all the time. Work-life balance has just gone out of the window since we've been working at home. And maybe if we, as part of our plan to improve workplace well-being and to ensure that our employees have a life outside of work so they can continue to do this great work of our organization, maybe we, as part of our plan and strategy, we can adopt some of these technologies to give space, to give staff a rest, maybe to switch to the 4-day work week and give that time.
I hear what you're saying. But I am thinking about, or I should say,
you're not buying it, though, right? You heard it, but you're not buying it.
You know where I'm headed, Allison.
Yes.
I think about what happened with fax machines and emails and cell phones or smartphones. Yeah. And we don't do good with space. It seems like we don't do very well. We create the technology that's supposed to free up the time so that we can do all of these things that are more beneficial. But our tendency seems not to do the things that are more beneficial, that we fill it up with something else or streamline so that we cut out those roles or something. How can we help protect this time that we're creating? And maybe that's part of the strategy, is thinking ahead, like with this is what we do with it.
So let me back up a half step, KiKi, and say, for anybody who was listening, if you can imagine in your mind's eye a transcript of what we're saying, you should triple, underline, and asterisk what Beth was saying about not using this tech to cut headcounts automatically, right? We cannot overemphasize that enough, right? This is not intended to go in and take your 4-person fundraising team and turn it into one and say, here's some tech, to fill up all the rest. This is why it's a leadership challenge, not a technical challenge. You could go right today, KiKi, go on to any, tech site, grab smart tech and fill up, your comms and marketing and development and back office with smart tech today. And all you'll get is busyness, right? Frantic busyness. That tech, and we are drawing on the last 30 years of experience of tech focusing on efficiency over effectiveness, right? So you have to start with a vision of what you want to be and how you want to do your work as an organization and what your values are and what matters to you. And then once you've instituted it and implemented it, you have to go back and measure. Are we actually using our time the way that we said we wanted to, right? There's what I call this epidemic of malmeasurement in the nonprofit sector, right? We measure the wrong stuff over and over again. That's how you get to that leaky bucket problem in fundraising. Right. Beth and I have been on boards forever. We've never heard a board discussion on those low donor retention rates.
Right. And I want to follow up Allison's great plea, call to action with more, again, the internal lens. You've probably been reading about the Great Resignation, and I've seen some stats coming in, I think from Minnesota, about nonprofit folks quitting their jobs. And let's face it, we've been treating people terribly. We overwork them, low pay, yada, yada, yada. And ask them to give their firstborn child and, works weekends. And what's happening, later on this pandemic, people are exhausted and we're seeing the Great Resignation, right? And any CEO who's had to hire people, we know what a drag that is, right? And how much time that takes and how much loss of productivity we get. And also now that people are they're looking for places where that aren't toxic environments, that aren't burnout bins. Okay. And burnout bins also include unrealistic, like grunt work embedded, as well as, being kind of a culture of working 24/7. And so that's a reason to start rethinking and remaking and reimagining the way we do work. We have this opportunity, once in a lifetime opportunity to do this. Let's do it.
So in your mind, the best outcome from someone reading your book, let's say we have an association executive director who is reading your book, the very best outcome from this executive director reading your book would be fill in the blank. And I'll go to you, Allison. Allison, what do you think?
First of all, the very best outcome for us is lots and lots and lots of association directors buying the book and reading it. Thank you. The number one thing I think we want people reading the book to understand is the need to stay human-centered with this tech, the need to lead with being human-centered in the tech and not just set it and forget it and let the tech go.
Beth, do you have is your answer similar?
I mean, I plus one to what Allison said about human-centered, but not to think about this as oh wow, we're going to do this tech. It's a tool. It's going to we're going to check the box, flip a switch, and it's going to change. But to think of it holistically as part of, and getting back to what Allison was saying, as part of culture change, reaffirming your values, and as part of that, being human-centered, building those relationships, move away from this transactional way that we're working, and perpetuating toxic workplaces.
Okay, so I am about to make a very awkward shift to asking questions that are not directly related to what you wrote about in the book, but more about the way that you wrote the book. Because from a personal standpoint, and for anyone who's followed the work that you've done over time, you've created a lot of work together. I want to ask the question that I think a lot of people might have out there, and that is, what is your writing process? How do you go about making these things happen and then ending up with, and what's on deck? Do you have a dream project that you would like a book maybe in the future that you would like to work on? So let's start with your process. How did the two of you work together? It's been a long time. You haven't, I mean, you've still got magic in the sauce. Let's talk about it.
Once Allison made a comment to me, well, I'll get to that. But first of all, we have complementary strengths and we work completely differently.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, we have this joke. My background, I was trained as a classical musician, so I'm very more linear and I'm organized. I like to okay, I want to think about the outline. I want to go step by step, and that's my first inclination. I mean, I have a left brain too, and I'm creative, but Alice is like, let's just she's more non-linear, and she made a comment to me. She said, you and I could be married. My husband's just like you are, a musician. And I think also that Allison, and I'll speak for myself too, we're very open to listening to each other, listening to each other's ideas. We're also very open to saying, no, that's crap.
That's important. That's actually really important, right?
Oh, no, I think this is the right thing. And we're okay about arguing it. And even also we have to speak together. And sometimes we're also in debriefs open to saying, hey, you said my line, or you didn't leave me an opening, or, so we're very open. We listen, and both the good and the bad. And so if we have to have difficult conversations, we have them,
Yep. At the core. So, KiKi, as I, said at the top of this, look, this is over 15 years of friendship and partnership. And there have been difficult moments. There have been absolutely, lovely, lovely, loving moments. And at the heart of it is a deep trust that we both know that we want to, we want to do something great together, but we can't do it together unless we're both, fully, engaged and acknowledged in the work. And I'll say this for me, I know my work is 1,000 times better when I'm doing it with Beth.
No,
than if I were
likewise,
doing it.
likewise.
That's so
Yeah.
that's so wonderful to hear, because there's been a lot about the shine theory and raising each other up, women raising other women up, and this idea of looking for ways that you can support each other. But you both have these great stellar reputations, great names in our world that we operate in, working in nonprofits and technology and looking at all of this stuff. Certainly ego comes into play at some point. How do you work on your relationship, to your creative relationship together, so that you are cultivating that trust and relationship with one another and not letting ego get in the way? And I know that I should direct that. I'll go to Allison. Allison, you're.
I think we're both at a point in our career, KiKi, and just as people now, where we want to do good work. We're maybe less concerned than we were about, who gets credit for what, than,
whose name goes first.
We go back and forth. If somebody's name went first on one article, then the other one on the second article. So some of that is practice. But I also think, you know what? We're two really grown-up people, and we know it's a privilege to do the work. We want to do the work well. And at the end of the day, that's the only thing that matters.
Yeah. Also, we chose to work together, right? Yeah. And we've had this long-standing relationship. And I think when we first started working together, we first met each other because I was blogging way back when, like back in 2003, 2004, when Allison published her first book, Momentum, and she approached me, would you write a book review? I think I might have been the first blog review. And then we followed up and we stayed in touch. And then there was another project and we had a small little project together. We had such a great time. And that led to the network nonprofit, and we're always thinking about each other, and also on a practical level in communication, we are in contact regularly, and we have different ways that we like to communicate too, and we'll adapt to each other's to that. Like one of us likes to text more than email,
Which one does the text more than the email? I want to know.
Can you guess?
I would guess that you're the one that texts more, Beth. I would guess you text or email more, Beth. Is that true? No?
Allison likes to text.
Allison does the text.
I could just live on text, and Beth at times smartly says we need to actually get on the phone.
the phone, and she's like, "Why are you calling me?
We gotta talk." Okay.
Oh wow, wow, that's so cool. I love that. See how
I strongly advise, if you ever find a writing partner where you can write things, put in brackets, and say, "Put your stuff here," and it all works, stick with that partner. You've got something good.
Or else you can start the first shitty draft and you can say in a text or an email, I put the first shitty draft up, go at it.
and there's no harm done at all. There's no, pride of authorship. We're just trying to create something together.
I love it. So you probably have a shared drive, shared document. One of you has your thing, and then you send it and you say, okay, your turn.
Yep. You go in.
We have a phrase. I kibitzed with it. I fooled around with it a bit. It's your turn. It's like a game of tennis.
Go fix it.
I love it. This is, I mean, I think this was the thing that I was so interested in. Okay, I'm not going to ask you to reveal any secrets, but what I will ask is that if there are topics or subject matter that you would like to investigate in future books, have you explored the idea of like what would be at the top of your priority list for, maybe some future projects that you would work on together? See how I like expanded it. It could be any project.
Well, we certainly want to, to begin to help organizations go through their own readiness process for smart tech. So we are talking to groups about consulting with them on that and learning more of what their actual experience is in preparing to use smart tech well.
Okay, interesting. I'm so fascinated. Well, I want to thank you for spending so much time with me today. There's so much that we covered, and I do think that obviously the work that you create is work that is practical, that is not, it's not just theoretical. Everyone, you can go and buy their book, and I promise you're going to have something that you can actually use in your organizations. Use it and use it and use it. And if you're like me, dog ear it and mark it and highlight it and use it again. And I do hope that you just have this bestseller situation so that you have to come back on Association Chat, talk with me again about all of it, and update me on and update all of us on the progress that's been made. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us, KiKi. We'd always be happy to come back.
Thank you so much, KiKi. We really appreciated it. And look forward to future times to talk with you again.
Mm-hmm. Future times. Cheers to future times. Cheers to Beth and Allison. And I hope that everyone runs out to go grab the Smart Nonprofit, Staying Human-Centered in an Age of Automation. Now, as of right now, if you're watching this live, you can get the Kindle version, and it's available, and you can start reading it right now. The official release, though, for the desktop, for the hardback, that you can order, and you can pre-order it and everything like that. I've already got my pre-order in. The official release day is tomorrow. So make sure that you get that order and make sure that you check this out. I promise you, you won't regret it. And I hope that you learned something of value today about technology, about the way that we can become smart nonprofits, about the way that we can work together and cultivate trust with great working partners that will help us to create new things together. Because a good example of this, what can result as a result of great trust and collaboration, is the relationship that you have between Allison Fine and Beth Kanter. So I hope you learned something of value today. And until next time, everyone, keep asking questions to learn every day. As Joseph Campbell once said, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. Have a great rest of the week, everyone.